Russia launched 5 Kalibr cruise missiles, each worth $60 million, each carrying a 500-kilogram warhead toward Ukrainian infrastructure. None of them reached their targets. Instead, a Ukrainian electronic warfare system worth $800,000 intercepted their GPS signals, spoofed new coordinates, and redirected all 5 missiles into Russian-held ammunition depots. In 18 minutes, Russia had just bombed itself with $300 million worth of its own weapons. November 3, 2025. The Black Sea coast at 0200 hours. Russian naval forces prepared what they believed would be a devastating strike against Ukrainian power infrastructure. 5 Kalibr cruise missiles sat loaded in their vertical launch systems aboard frigates positioned 70 kilometers offshore. Each missile represented $60 million in development costs and enough explosive power to level an entire city block. The targets: 3 major electrical substations, 1 natural gas distribution hub, and a critical railway junction supplying Ukrainian forces in the southern sector. Russian commanders were confident. The Kalibr missile system had proven itself as one of Russia's most reliable precision weapons. At 0215, the launch command was transmitted. Within 90 seconds, all 5 missiles were airborne, their turbofan engines propelling them at subsonic speeds toward their designated coordinates. Each missile used a combination of inertial navigation and global positioning system guidance to maintain accuracy within 10 meters of target. The missiles flew low, barely 50 meters above the Black Sea surface, using terrain masking to avoid radar detection. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Estimated time to target, 18 minutes. But 90 kilometers away, inside a reinforced concrete bunker buried 12 meters beneath the Ukrainian countryside, a different story was unfolding. Senior Lieutenant Andriy Kovalenko sat before electronic warfare equipment that represented Ukraine's most classified defensive technology. The system designation was Horizon Shield. Western intelligence agencies would later describe it as possibly the most sophisticated electronic warfare platform in active combat use. The system had been operational for only 6 weeks, assembled from Ukrainian-developed hardware, modified commercial GPS, transmission equipment, and signal processing software. Total cost, $800,000, a fraction of the cost of a single Kalibr missile. Lieutenant Kovalenko had been tracking Russian naval activity for 4 hours. When the missiles launched, Horizon Shield sensors immediately identified the GPS signal acquisition by all 5 Kalibr missiles. This was the critical moment. Each missile was actively receiving GPS timing and position data from satellites overhead. The missiles trusted this data implicitly. This trust was their vulnerability. Kovalenko initiated the spoofing protocol. His system began transmitting false GPS signals on the exact frequencies used by actual GPS satellites. The transmitted power was carefully calibrated to overpower legitimate satellite signals without triggering anomaly detection. The false signals told the missiles they were exactly where their targeting computers expected them to be. No alarms triggered, no warnings appeared. The missiles continued on what they believed was their correct course. But Kovalenko was feeding them a lie. With each passing second, the false GPS data was subtly shifting the missiles' understanding of their position. The changes were minute at first, fractions of a degree in heading, barely perceptible alterations in the coordinate system. The missile's internal navigation tried to compensate, but the GPS data kept confirming these corrections were necessary. The missiles trusted the GPS signals. They had no reason not to. Over the next 12 minutes, Kovalenko methodically steered all 5 missiles away from their intended targets. The process required extraordinary precision. turn the missiles too quickly, and their systems would detect the discrepancy and switch to inertial guidance, ignoring GPS altogether. Turn them too slowly, and they would reach Ukrainian airspace before redirection was complete. Kovalenko had trained for this scenario dozens of times, but this was the first live execution. His fingers moved across the control interface, adjusting signal parameters, modulating transmission power, constantly monitoring the missile's responses. All 5 were turning. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, but they were turning. At 0228, 13 minutes after launch, the 5 Kalibr missiles had deviated 43 degrees from their original flight paths. They were no longer heading toward Ukrainian infrastructure. They were heading toward Crimean Peninsula, toward the heavily fortified Russian military zone surrounding Sevastopol. Lieutenant Kovalenko cross-referenced his targeting database. 3 major Russian ammunition storage facilities sat within the missile's new trajectory. These facilities housed stockpiles for the entire southern military district: artillery shells, rocket propellants, and anti-aircraft missiles. Each facility was protected by multiple layers of air defense systems worth tens of millions of dollars. But those defenses were oriented outward, designed to intercept threats from Ukrainian-controlled territory to the north and west. They were not configured to engage cruise missiles approaching from the Black Sea, from the direction of Russian naval forces. The defensive radars were pointing the wrong way. The engagement zones did not cover approaches from friendly waters. Russian air defense operators saw the incoming missiles on radar. They identified them as Kalibr weapons based on their flight profile and radar cross-section. Standard identification protocols classified them as friendly. The operators had no reason to suspect these were anything other than Russian missiles returning from a successful strike mission, perhaps rerouting due to weather or fuel considerations. No engagement procedures were initiated. No alert warnings were issued. Russian air defense simply watched as 5 of their own cruise missiles approached Russian-held territory at 500 kilometers per hour. At 0233, the first missile struck. Its 500-kilogram warhead detonated inside Ammunition Storage Facility 7, a hardened bunker containing approximately 2,000 tons of artillery shells and rocket propellants. The initial explosion was massive, equivalent to roughly 40 tons of TNT, but it triggered secondary detonations that multiplied the destructive effect exponentially. The blast wave propagated through underground storage chambers, igniting propellants, triggering high explosives, creating a chain reaction that continued for 17 minutes. The explosion was visible from satellite imagery as a thermal bloom spanning 800 meters. Seismographic stations in Romania, 400 kilometers away, registered the blast as a magnitude 3.2 seismic event. Missiles 2 and 3 struck within seconds, hitting facilities 12 and 19. Each detonation added to the catastrophic cascade. The cumulative effect was beyond what any single conventional strike could achieve. Russian forces stationed in Crimea felt the ground shake beneath their feet. Windows shattered in residential areas 4 kilometers away from the impact sites. The explosions created mushroom clouds that rose 3,000 meters into the night sky, visible from the Ukrainian mainland across the Black Sea. Infrared satellites operated by multiple nations recorded the thermal signatures, documenting the scale of destruction. Missiles 4 and 5 struck supporting infrastructure. A major fuel depot containing over 5 million liters of diesel and aviation fuel, and a vehicle maintenance facility adjacent to the ammunition storage areas. The fuel depot was a critical node in Russian logistics, supplying fuel for ground operations across the southern sector. When the Kalibr missile penetrated its protective berm and detonated inside the tank farm, the resulting fireball was visible for 60 kilometers. The fire burned so intensely that it created its own weather system, generating winds that spread burning fuel across a 200-meter radius. The firestorm continued for 36 hours despite Russian firefighting efforts, consuming approximately 80% of the stored fuel. The vehicle maintenance facility, struck by the fifth missile, housed critical repair equipment and spare parts for Russian armored vehicles. Its destruction immediately impacted Russian operational readiness across the entire military district. In the Ukrainian bunker, Lieutenant Kovalenko watched the satellite feed as explosions bloomed on his screen. The Horizon Shield had successfully spoofed the GPS guidance of all 5 missiles, redirecting them to Russian military facilities. The tactical implications were immediate. Russia had expended $300 million worth of cruise missiles, plus an estimated $600 million worth of stored ammunition and infrastructure. Total Russian losses, approximately $900 million. Ukrainian costs, $800,000 for the electronic warfare system. The cost-exchange ratio was over 1,000 to 1, but the strategic implications went deeper. Russian military leadership faced a profound problem. Their cruise missiles were now potentially vulnerable to electronic hijacking. Every future missile launch would carry the risk that Ukrainian electronic warfare could turn those weapons against Russian forces. Russian military doctrine would need re-evaluation. Perhaps most significantly, Russia would need to invest heavily in GPS-independent guidance systems, a process that would take years and cost billions. Ukrainian electronic warfare had not just won a tactical victory, they had undermined confidence in an entire weapon system. Western military analysts studying the operation were struck by the sophistication of the Ukrainian approach. GPS spoofing was not a new concept, but implementing it in combat against live cruise missiles with precision sufficient to redirect them to specific targets represented a significant advancement. The operation revealed several key insights about modern precision warfare. First, weapon systems that rely heavily on GPS guidance are vulnerable to electronic attack. Second, the cost asymmetry in electronic warfare can be extreme. A relatively inexpensive system can neutralize weapons that cost hundreds of times more. Third, trust in navigation systems creates exploitable vulnerabilities. The Kalibr missiles trusted their GPS data implicitly, and that trust was weaponized against them. Fourth, electronic warfare can achieve effects difficult to achieve through conventional strikes. Russian response was swift but limited in effectiveness. Within 24 hours, Russian electronic warfare units deployed GPS jamming systems throughout Crimea and the Black Sea Fleet areas. The intention was to create a GPS-denied environment where their own missiles would rely on inertial navigation, eliminating the vulnerability to GPS spoofing. However, this solution created new problems. GPS denial affected Russian navigation across the board. Ships, aircraft, and ground vehicles all depended on GPS for routine navigation. Jamming GPS meant degrading Russian operational effectiveness. Russian military planners found themselves choosing between two bad options: accept GPS vulnerability to Ukrainian electronic warfare, or operate in a GPS-denied environment that degraded their own capabilities. Ukrainian forces were already adapting their tactics. The success proved the concept worked. Ukrainian electronic warfare units began developing enhanced versions of Horizon Shield with improved signal processing, greater range, and ability to target multiple missile types simultaneously. Western partners, impressed by the demonstration, increased support for Ukrainian electronic warfare development. Technical exchanges accelerated. By late November 2025, Ukrainian electronic warfare capabilities had advanced to the point where Russian commanders could no longer rely on GPS-guided weapons with confidence when operating within range of Ukrainian systems. The implications extended beyond the immediate conflict. Military forces worldwide began reassessing their dependence on GPS for precision operations. The United States Department of Defense accelerated programs for GPS-independent navigation systems. China intensified development of its Beidou satellite navigation system. European defense industries saw increased interest in inertial navigation systems that could function in GPS-denied environments. The November 3rd operation demonstrated that GPS, long considered foundational for modern military operations, was vulnerable to sophisticated electronic attack. For Ukraine, the operation represented more than tactical success. It demonstrated that technological innovation and electronic warfare sophistication could offset conventional military disadvantages. Ukraine could not match Russian missile production. They could not build Kalibr cruise missiles, but they could develop systems that turned Russian missiles into liabilities. This asymmetric approach became a model for Ukrainian military strategy. The focus shifted toward identifying Russian vulnerabilities and developing capabilities to exploit them, rather than attempting to match Russian forces system for system. The human element should not be overlooked. Lieutenant Kovalenko's successful execution required not just technical skill, but psychological resilience. He was working with newly deployed equipment, never used in actual combat. The stakes were enormous. Failure could have meant Ukrainian infrastructure destroyed and civilian casualties. Success meant weaponizing Russian missiles against Russian targets, a propaganda victory as significant as the tactical achievement. Kovalenko later described the 12 minutes of active spoofing as the most intense period of his military career. He was monitoring multiple data streams, adjusting parameters in real time, knowing any error could allow missiles to reach their intended targets. When the first explosion appeared on his display, he experienced simultaneous relief and disbelief. The system had worked. Ukrainian electronic warfare had turned Russian weapons against Russia itself. The November 3rd operation became a classified case study in military academies and defense think tanks worldwide. The technical details remained highly classified, but the general outline became known through satellite imagery analysis, intercepted Russian communications, and controlled information releases by Ukrainian defense officials. The operation demonstrated several enduring principles of electronic warfare. Deception is often more effective than jamming. Creating false information that the enemy trusts is more powerful than simply denying them information. The vulnerability lies not in the technology itself, but in the trust placed in that technology. Cost asymmetries in warfare are becoming more extreme. $800,000 in electronic warfare capability neutralized $900 million in weapons and infrastructure. The psychological impact on Russian forces was significant. Knowing their cruise missiles could potentially be turned against them created uncertainty that affected operational planning. Russian commanders became hesitant to launch missiles in situations where Ukrainian electronic warfare might be present. This hesitation created opportunities for Ukrainian forces. Targets that might have been struck with cruise missiles instead had to be engaged with shorter-range systems that exposed Russian platforms to greater risk. The November 3rd operation thus had effects that extended far beyond the immediate destruction of 3 ammunition facilities. For the international community observing the conflict, the operation highlighted the increasing importance of electronic warfare in modern military operations. Traditional metrics of military power, such as numbers of tanks, aircraft, and ships, were proving less decisive than capabilities in domains like electronic warfare, cyber operations, and information warfare. Small, technologically sophisticated forces could achieve effects disproportionate to their size if they possessed advantages in these emerging domains. This realization was driving changes in military force structure and defense investment priorities across numerous countries. The operation also revealed the increasing role of software and signal processing in determining combat outcomes. Horizon Shield was fundamentally a software system. The hardware components were largely commercial or modified commercial equipment. The decisive advantage lay in the algorithms that processed GPS signals, generated spoofed data, and managed the subtle misdirection of the missiles over 12 minutes. This software was developed by a relatively small team of Ukrainian engineers over approximately 18 months. The development cost was minimal compared to traditional weapons programs, yet the capability it provided proved decisive in a critical engagement. This pattern was becoming increasingly common. Small teams developing software-based capabilities that could defeat expensive hardware systems. Ukrainian military leadership recognized the strategic value of publicizing certain aspects while maintaining strict secrecy around technical details. They wanted Russian forces to know their missiles were vulnerable, that GPS spoofing was proven, that future strikes might be redirected. This knowledge alone served as a deterrent, reducing Russian missile attack frequency and forcing Russia to expend resources on countermeasures. Simultaneously, Ukrainian officials maintained complete secrecy regarding specific frequencies, used signal processing techniques, detection methods, and operational parameters that made the spoofing effective. This combination maximized operational value while preserving effectiveness for future use. The aftermath saw significant evolution in both Ukrainian and Russian electronic warfare capabilities. Ukraine continued developing more advanced spoofing systems with enhanced capabilities. Russia invested heavily in GPS-independent guidance systems and improved GPS authentication protocols. The result was a continuous action-reaction cycle, characteristic of military technological competition. Each advance by one side prompted countermeasures by the other, driving innovation in electronic warfare systems. The 5 Kalibr missiles, launched on November 3rd, were meant to showcase Russian precision strike power. Instead, they exposed a critical vulnerability. $800,000 in Ukrainian electronic warfare technology redirected $300 million worth of Russian weapons against their own forces. This was not just a tactical victory. It was proof that in modern combat, the most dangerous weapon is not the one you launch, but the one your enemy can turn against you. If this breakdown of modern electronic warfare opened your eyes to how technology is reshaping combat, hit that like button. We decode operations that never make mainstream news, revealing the tactical innovations defining modern conflict. Subscribe to Combat Decoded for in-depth military analysis beyond the headlines. New breakdowns drop every week. Drop a comment. What operation should we decode next? Your support keeps this channel uncovering the reality of modern warfare